Alright, let's really talk about this. Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili 2 is actually happening, and I gotta ask, why? Because if you watch the first fight, you would already know how the story ends. Sean didn't just lose, he got completely outclassed. It wasn't even competitive, it wasn't even close, and there was no controversy. Merab dominated him in every aspect. From the opening bell, Merab was on him like a heat-seeking missile. There was no feeling out process, no chance for Sean to find his range. It was just immediately pressure, takedowns on command, consistently suffocating pace. O'Malley was drowning in it, and there was no lifeline. Every time he tried to create space, Merab was already on top of him. Every scramble went into Merab's favor. Every clinch exchange turned into another takedown. Sean didn't even have time to get his offense going because he was consistently fighting just to stay on his feet. And what makes it worse, we all saw this coming. Maybe I try to deny at first, some of us Sean O'Malley fans at the time, but yeah, deep down everyone knew. This wasn't some shocking upset. This was textbook Merab. This is what he does to everyone. His cardio is ridiculous. His pace is suffocating. And if he gets a hold of you, you're going for a ride over and over and over again. Sean had no answer for it. No adjustments. No way of stopping it. He was just surviving. And by that time, the fight was over. It wasn't just a loss. It was a statement. So now what? We're running it back. Why? What are we doing here? What's the angle? Are we supposed to believe that Sean has magically developed elite takedown defense overnight? Are we gonna pretend that he suddenly has the tools to stop Merab's pressure? Because if he couldn't stop it before, what exactly has changed? Look, to play devil's advocate, I get it. The bantamweight division is in a weird spot right now. Umar just lost to Merab. Figgy got beat up by Jan. Corey lost to Umar. Jan is on a 2-fight win streak, but he got dominated by Merab not that long ago. So yeah, I understand why they're looking at Sean for the rematch to a certain extent. The options aren't really exactly wide open, but just because the division is messy doesn't mean we have to force a rematch. That doesn't make sense. And that's the thing, I just don't know how anything changes for Sean against Merab. Some matchups are just bad, and this feels like one of those situations where no matter how many times you run it back, the result is probably gonna stay the same. Merab's pace, his relentless pressure, his grappling, it's all tailor-made to shut Sean down, and we've already seen it happen. Now, to be fair, Sean did have some moments in the first fight. He won 2 rounds, and there was a moment where he might have hurt Merab to the body, so it's not like he got wiped out every second of that fight. But even with those small moments of success, I just have a really hard time believing that he can actually beat Merab for over 5 rounds. Those glimpses of hope don't change the fact that Merab's style is still a nightmare for him. Another thing that really kind of bothers me is the whole thing feels rushed. Why are we so quick to book Merab versus O'Malley again? The UFC never rushes champions back into title fights like this. You could have delayed this entire thing by doing Merab versus Pantoja, which would have been a great legacy defining fight for both guys. But no, they don't. They don't think Pantoja is popular enough, so he doesn't get the same opportunity. And listen man, if they really wanted to run back O'Malley versus Merab immediately, fine, but they didn't. They waited, and now suddenly it warrants because Merab beat Umar. How does that even make sense? Congrats Merab, you beat Umar. Your prize is a rematch with the guy you already beat and dominated. What? If anything, they should run it back. Jan versus O'Malley as a #1 contender fight. That's a fight with history that actually has a lot of stake. But nope, instead they're throwing O'Malley right back in it. It's starting to feel like this weird UFC pattern where certain guys just get title shots no matter what. It's like Adesanya, when he had that situation with just endless rematches. And suddenly, when you look at his title history, it's a mess. And that's what really annoys me. Legacy actually matters. When we look back at title reigns, at records, at how many title fights a guy had, it should mean something. But when you're just tossing guys back into rematches that they didn't really earn, it makes everything feel so cheap. So yeah, this whole thing is just lazy matchmaking, and it's starting to make title fights feel way less special in my opinion. And I've even seen people saying that they should have done Jan versus Merab 2 instead. And honestly, I don't hate this idea. I get why people are bringing it up. Jan is coming off a 2-fight win streak in the top 5, and in terms of the rankings, you could argue that he deserves it. But if I'm gonna be real with you guys, I just wouldn't be interested in that fight. We already saw it. we saw Merab absolutely overwhelm Jan for 25 straight minutes. It wasn't some close competitive war. It wasn't some fight where you walk away thinking, man, if they fought again, it can go either way. No, Merab drowned him. He broke him with a pace and volume with consistent pressure. Jan just couldn't get anything going. So what difference is the second time gonna do? Is Jan suddenly gonna figure out how to handle Merab's cardio? Is he gonna stop the relentless takedown attempts? I just don't see it. Now, does Jan deserve something big? Absolutely. And that's why I've been saying that they should have done Jan versus O'Malley 2 as a #1 contender fight instead. That fight actually makes sense. There's history there. Their first fight was close, controversial even. A lot of people even thought Jan won. And stylistically, it's an exciting fight because both guys bring something different to the table. And if you can run that back and make it a 5-round fight, now that's a fight where people would care about. But instead, we're running back fights where we already know the outcome of. And look, man, if I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, Sean O'Malley is almost always going to lose to Merab Dvalishvili. And I don't mean in a puncher's chance kind of way. I mean in a fundamental mismatch kind of way. If you actually go back and break down their first fight, it's clear that Sean never had an answer for what Merab does best. First off, Merab's pace is completely overwhelming. The dude fights like he's got a second pair of lungs. The moment that the fight started, Merab was already in Sean's face, cutting off the cage, feigning level changes, making him react. And that's the thing. Sean needs space. He's a long, rangy striker who thrives when he can set traps, manage distance, and get his timing down. But when someone like Merab is consistently pressuring, consistently making him defend, that entry striking game gets taken away. There's no time to set anything up because Sean is always reacting. And then there's the takedown threat. I mean, let's be honest, Sean's wrestling defense has never been like super elite. He's improved, sure, but we're talking about a guy in Merab who relies on relentless takedowns to break people. Every time Sean tried to create space, Merab was already on a shot. And the thing that makes Merab so dangerous isn't just the takedown itself, it's the chaining of them. He doesn't just shoot once and gives up. He'll just keep adjusting and switching his body lock. He'll drag you down in scrambles. He'll trip you against the fence. It's consistent. And once you're down, good luck getting back up without burning a ridiculous amount of energy. And speaking of energy, Sean's cardio is nowhere near Merab's level. That's another massive problem. You can see it by the second round. Sean was already looking discouraged. Not necessarily gassed out, but you can tell he was realizing, oh, this is just a never ending. Every time he worked back to his feet, Merab was still glued to him. Every time he tried to separate, Merab was closing the gap immediately. That wears on a fighter. Mentally, it's exhausting when you feel like you're fighting a machine that never slows down. Then there's the striking issue. And yeah, I know people love to say, well, if Sean kept it standing, he has a chance. But let's be real, he never got the chance to keep it standing. Every exchange was rushed, disturbed, or turned into a clinch situation. Sean couldn't get comfortable. He couldn't establish his jab. He couldn't set up his kicks. And even when he did land a clean shot here and there, Merab just ate it and just kept coming forward. And the worst part, there's no obvious adjustment that fixes these problems. Like what Sean's gonna do? Suddenly develop Habib level takedown defense in a few months? Start stuffing shots like he's a prime Jose Aldo? Magically gain 5 times the cardio output? It's just not realistic. Merab is a stylistic nightmare matchup for him. And that's not something that Sean can fix with a little tweaking. This is one of those matchups where unless Merab suddenly decides to fight dumb, Sean's always gonna be fighting from behind. You know what else is huge about that first fight? We saw Merab break Sean's will. Like, don't get me wrong, Sean was still fighting, still trying to survive, but you could see it. You could see in his body language, in the way that he was moving, he was drowning and he knew it. And if that wasn't clear enough, just go back and watch the clip of Tim Welch talking to Sean in his corner saying it's almost over. That tells you everything you need to know. His own coach could see what's happening. It wasn't just that Sean was losing rounds, he was getting drowned by Merab's pressure. And at a certain point, it stopped being about whether Sean could win, it became about whether he could just last until the final bell. That's the difference between losing a fight and getting broken. And when a guy gets broken once, what's stopping it from happening again?